here from Janette's TV. I'm at the Elevate Tech Conference in Toronto. And what a conference this is. 4 days of incredible learning, all kinds of very high influencers in the digital and tech industries, from fashion to food and everything in between. Investments, health. We have so much great coverage coming at you. Please stay with us.
Guy Kawasaki. So a little bit about Guy, because he's a pretty impressive individual. And in taking a look and reading through his bio, I found some fun facts that I wanted to pull out. He's worked for Steve Jobs, not once, but twice. And he actually turned down a third time. He's known for coining the term evangelist. And he's been an advisor and an evangelist to hundreds of startups and Fortune 500 companies. This next one might be my favorite. Sir Richard Branson shined his shoes and actually took off his own jacket and used it as a shine cloth when he was trying to get Guy to fly Virgin Atlantic. I thought that one was pretty good. And during all of this time, I don't know how, but he managed to find the time to write 14 books. And all these little stories and decades of experience in the tech sector have really led and contributed to a vast array of knowledge and stories that he actually used to accumulate into his latest book, Wise Guy. And coincidentally, Wise Guy was how I met Guy Kawasaki. The programming team sometimes has to get a little crafty to bring these incredible speakers and high-profile talent to the festival. And so when we were at South by Southwest and I walked by a book signing and I saw it was featuring Guy Kawasaki, I knew that was my shot. And so I went, I bought a book, I stood in line. If anyone's ever done this before, they go before you, they give you a little post-it note and you say, write the name of who they would like you to make the signing to. And so all I wrote was, Guy, join me at Elevate. I'm pleased to welcome Guy Kawasaki.
Thank you very much for that fun introduction. A little bit of a factual correction. I did not coin the word evangelism. There was Jesus before me. Admittedly, there was a 2,000-year gap, but yeah, Jesus came before me. Listen, I truly do enjoy coming to Canada. I love your donuts. I love your maple syrup. I love hockey. And it's especially true this year because it's so good to be in a country that's a democracy. It has obvious high regards for women's rights. That is inclusive. That is immigrant friendly. That is concerned about climate change. And it has a leader that can admit a mistake. It's very refreshing to be here. Also, I think, am I correct, is the Hockey Hall of Fame or museum right across the street? Yeah. So as a San Jose Sharks fan, this is as close as I'll ever get to being standing up. That said, at least San Jose has an NHL team, unlike Toronto. So, listen, I am 65 years old. I have been living in Silicon Valley for most of my life. And as a Silicon Valley resident, I've worked for Apple, I've worked for Google, I've started some software companies, I've invested in many companies. Today, I am the chief evangelist of a company out of Sydney, Australia called Canva. Canva is an online graphics design service that hopefully many of you use. In the 1% category, I'm a Mercedes-Benz brand ambassador, which means that I get paid to drive a Mercedes. And finally, I'm an executive fellow at the Haas School of Business for UC Berkeley. Most of you probably heard of me because of my work at Apple. And at Apple, I was software evangelist from 1983 to 1987. And then I was a chief evangelist from 1995 to 1997. So I worked for Steve Jobs. I was in the Macintosh division. It seems, though, that every time I left Apple, Apple did better. And one of my big regrets in life was actually leaving Apple. As you heard, I left Apple twice, and I turned Steve Jobs down for a third offer. And if I had not made any of those three mistakes, I'd probably be in Tahiti right now, not Toronto. So it all worked out. It all worked out. Listen, at 65, I've had a lot of great experiences in my life. I made a lot of mistakes. So one day I decided to write a book that was a compilation of the stories of my life, what I learned throughout my life. And this book, Wise Guy, it is not a memoir. It is not an autobiography. I don't consider my life one of those kind of made for movies life. I didn't, come across the border with just the shirt on my back and struggled against deprivation and violence and all that. I don't have that kind of dramatic story. I come from a lower middle class family in Honolulu, Hawaii. I didn't know I was poor. I had a wonderful life, but I did learn a lot. And so if you're familiar with the book Chicken Soup for the Soul, this is kind of my version of Chicken Soup for the Soul. All my stories. At one time, I tried to convince my publisher to call this book Miso Soup for the Soul. It didn't work out, so we called it Wise Guy. And I'm going to give you sort of my top 10 tips of wisdom that I hope you can take and understand, use it in your lives. In the words of Steve Jobs, may it help you dent the universe. One of the uses that I found that's most common for my book, believe it or not, is that parents have written to me and said, I have to share this story with my kids because I've been telling my kids the same thing and they just don't believe me. But if they read your book, I think they'll believe me. I should have given a copy to Michelle Obama, but that's a different discussion. So this is the lessons of my life, the lessons in tech, the lessons in Silicon Valley. Okay? So, first of all, for those of you who have seen many tech speakers, none of them here, of course, there are two salient points about tech speakers. First, almost all tech speakers suck. Except at the ones at Elevate. The second thing is almost all tech speakers go long. And that is a deadly combination. If you suck and your speech is short, it's okay. And if you're great and your speech goes long, also okay. But if you suck and go long, that's just a deadly combination. Okay? So what I do is I use the top 10 formats, and then in case you think I suck, you can kind of gauge about how much longer I'll suck, because you know I have 10 key points. Okay? So, the first story and the first hindsight I want to talk about is that, when things are not working out, when the system is against you, when the opportunity is not there, change a losing game. Make a change. Make a decision. So this is a picture of my ancestors. The person in the top row, second from the left, is my father. My aunts and grandparents are there in the front row. Basically, I'm third generation Japanese American. My family moved from Japan to Hawaii to pick sugarcane. They did it because there was just a lack of vertical space to move in Japan. They had very little economic opportunity, so they had basically ripped up their entire life and moved to Hawaii. And obviously, my life would be very different if they hadn't done that. Maybe I wouldn't exist because my family was from Hiroshima, and they could have died in the atomic bomb, so I might not even exist. But in a sense, I owe my success for my grandparents' generation, who had the courage to get on a ship and come to Hawaii and start from scratch picking sugarcane. Which I must admit, when I hear about some of my country's immigration policies and they're saying, we just want the best and brightest and richest, if they use that standard today, I would still be in Hiroshima or dead. I mean, maybe I'd be working in Starbucks or Hiroshima, but I would not be where I am today. So I think, one of the key lessons I learned is you have to change your losing game. The second thing that changed the arc of my life is my parents had an obsession with education. Now, contrary to Asian American stereotypes, I don't want you to think that my parents had me enrolled in violin at the age of 2, studying calculus at the age of 3, starting a foundation at the age of 5, but they definitely thought that education was the key. My father and mother never went to college. My father and mother both graduated from high school, but really went no further. So I show you this. This is a picture of my elementary school in Honolulu, Hawaii. It's Kalihi Elementary. Now, for those of you who are familiar with Hawaii, Kalihi is a little bit past the airport on the way to Waikiki. It is hardly what you would call an upper class area. There's a lot of diversity here: Hawaiians, Filipinos, Samoans, Japanese, some white people called haoles, a few of those, but mostly it was lower middle income. And at this school, there was a 6th grade teacher named Trudy Akau. And Trudy Akau took my parents aside one day and said, you know what? Guy is too intelligent, he has too much potential, you need to get him out of the public school system and get him into a more challenging private school system. Because in Hawaii, the private schools are much better than the public schools. So my parents, and they, believe me, they didn't have the money to do this really, they took me out of this school and they put me into a school called Iolani. For those of you familiar with Hawaii, you know that there are 2 kind of prep academic schools in Hawaii, Iolani and Punahou. Punahou is the school that Barack Obama went to. Iolani is the school that Kawasaki went to. So, tell you a funny story. So last night, I was in the cherished 100 people who got to take a picture with Michelle Obama. And so when I went up to her, I said, Michelle, imagine what Barack could have achieved if he had gone to Iolani instead. So I tell you, if Trudy Akau had not made my parents put me into this very challenging private school, I would also not be here today. And the lesson there is that education counts. And I think the lesson there is that, if you're a teacher, if you're a mentor, if you're an advisor, you read about people like Steve Jobs who dent the universe and changed the world, and Elon Musk electrifies cars, and all these kind of major billionaire kind of things. But you know what? One teacher, one coach, one mentor, one advisor can change the world for one student. And that to me is as good as anything Steve Jobs has ever done. Get an education. This is a man named Harold Keebles. Harold Keebles was my English teacher in my senior year of high school. And Harold Keebles was the toughest teacher that I ever had in my life. Steve Jobs was the toughest boss, Harold Keebles, toughest teacher. And so when we were in English composition, the way he would work is you wrote reports, you wrote stories. He looked at your composition, he marked the errors that you made, you got back your composition, you had to write the sentence incorrectly, as you did. You had to write the rule that you broke, lack of serial comma, split infinitive, passive voice. And then you had to write the sentence correctly at the end. And this is before word processing, cutting and pasting, all this. This is, writing it out, longhand. And so that's a real pain in the ass. And that's how I learned to write, because of Harold Keebles. As you heard, I have now 15 books. And I assure you that Harold Keebles is in heaven cracking up because I don't think he would have said, yeah, Guy is the student of mine that's going to write 15 books. There is no freaking way that he would have predicted that. And as further evidence to that rare moment of humility, so when I was writing the book, I had to look for old pictures to put into the book. This picture's in the book. And in going through all this stuff that my parents had saved, I found an English report card. And so my recollection to my children has always been, yeah, unlike you, I didn't have all this social media. I wasn't defocused. I wasn't watching YouTube all day. I wasn't watching, Dexter all night. I was studious. I was working. I was trying to, be a I could be, diligent, good Asian American, right? And so I was like, I don't know if I was straight A's, but I was up there. I tied for the scholar. I tied for the athlete scholar award in my school, and I won the scholar athlete. So I'm telling this whole picture to my kids to set the academic standard for my family, right? Right. And then I find this. Oops, it was blocked out. Okay, I found, believe it or not, I found an English report card. And I had a C- in that class. And the comment was, Guy is doing less than honors work in an honors class. Next quarter, Guy is showing some elements of diligence and some elements of progress, but not much. And so I had to show that report card, and I'm sorry I hit the slide, maybe in a rare act of pride. I was a total C student in English, and so there's another lesson there, which is selective memory. I really thought I was an A student in English, but I wasn't. Third thing that I learned is to get motive in any way you can. When you read biographies and memoirs, you listen to the Michelle Obamas, you always think, oh my God, they have such lofty goals. They're going to end poverty. Greta is going to end climate change. They're going to really dent the universe, change the world. And that's what motivates them. You know that Sandra Bullock show where she's a beauty contestant, and every beauty contestant has to make an essay about a personal statement about what's important to her. She talks about peace and weather, I don't know, whatever. This is, what's the name of that movie? Yes. And so you think it's all like that, right? So let me tell you my story. So this is a picture of a bus stop. This bus stop is in Honolulu, Hawaii. It's at a high school called Kaimuki. Kaimuki is in a lower economic area of Hawaii. Iolani is across the street from Kaimuki, but this is the bus stop that I have to catch a bus to go home. So one day, some big Samoan kid robbed me at this bus stop, okay? And that was a very traumatic, he didn't stick a gun at me or knife me or anything, but his mere physical presence threatened me, and I had to give him all the money I had. And that so traumatized me, but in a sense, it motivated me, because that day I said, God, you are going to study hard, you're going to work hard, you are never going to live in a place where you're going to get hijacked again. Nothing about ending poverty, climate change, raising the level of literacy. I just didn't want to live where I would get hijacked. Fast forward a few years, I'm at Stanford. That's a whole nother story. I don't know how I got into Stanford. I am so old that when I applied to Stanford, being Japanese American, I was considered an oppressed minority. That's right, wrap your mind around that. They had to admit me because I was impoverished, and because the opportunities were not equal for Asian Americans back then. Anyway, so I'm at Stanford, and luck has it, I get paired with a guy named Mike Boych, and you'll see his picture again. Mike Boych comes from a very wealthy coal mining family who lived in Phoenix, Arizona. So you know how in college, Thanksgiving or some holiday you go home with your roommate, Hawaii was too far. So I go to home with him to Phoenix. And we go to his house, and his house backyard is the golf course of the Arizona Burke Hotel. like my head is exploding. This guy lives on a country club. And then his father drives a Rolls Royce. That night, we go to dinner at the Arizona Biltmore. And his mom says, I'm tired, guy, will you drive me home in my Ferrari? My head is further exploding. I mean, this is like Miami Vice. I'm going to drive a Ferrari? So I drove this Ferrari for 1 block home. And I'll tell you something, that changed my life. Because I said, someday I am going to buy a Porsche or a Ferrari or a Mercedes-Benz. So I'm telling you all these stories, not just to, be transparent about what a simplistic, shallow person I am. But I'm telling you, you know what? It didn't matter that I didn't want to get hijacked and I wanted to buy a Ferrari, and that's what motivated me. It's not what motivates you, it's what you do with that motivation. Next thing is a great story about motivation, which is one day I'm in Menlo Park, and at this point it was about 20 years ago, I had a 911 Porsche, okay? So I'm in my Porsche, and if you're driving a Porsche, you're a smug son of a bitch, right? So I'm in this Porsche, and I'm at this stoplight, and I look over to my left, and there's a car with 4 teenage girls. And they're giggling, and they're smiling, and they're making eye contact with me. And I'm thinking, God, you have truly arrived. Maybe not Justin Bieber level, but even teenage girls know who you are. It's because of your writing, your speaking, work at Apple, startup maven, all this kind of stuff, right? .com guy. So the girl in the front seat goes like this. Roll down your window. Clearly not a Porsche owner. You don't roll down a Porsche window, you push a button. But anyway, so I push my button, the window goes down. She sticks out her head and she says, "Are you Jackie Chan?" So, that's a good story, that's a story about humility, but I'll tell you something, since that day, again, motivation, insipid, shallow, powerful nonetheless, since that day, one of my goals in life is that someday, in Hong Kong, when they're not rioting, Jackie Chan is in his Bentley, or hopefully a Mercedes S-Class, and he's at a parking, he's stopped at a light, looks over, 4 teenage girls making eye contact, smiling, all that, and Jackie Chan said, of course, they recognize me, I'm Jackie Chan. Girl in the front seat, roll down your Bentley window, puts down his window, sticks out her and says, "Are you Guy Kawasaki?" That's my goal. I give you this picture just so you can see the similarity. Now, you might think, oh yeah, Guy, you hang out with Michelle Obama, you hang out with Jackie Chan, you hang out with, Elon Musk, Steve Jobs, all that. Well, let me tell you something, I've never met Jackie Chan. So I was in the Beijing wax museum. That's as close as I've gotten to Jackie Chan. The next thing, talking about motivation, going on is, I learned a very valuable lesson, which is, lots of people have this sense of pride that, I have to get in on my merit. I have to get in by earning it. I can't get in because your father, your mother, connections, luck, whatever. I have to get in and earn it. My observation is you just get in any way you can. It doesn't matter how you get in. What matters is what you do once you get in.
Thanks for being with us today on Janette's TV. I'm your host, Janette Burke, signing off. Please remember to like, comment, and share all our posts with your family and friends. You will find us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Pinterest, Vimeo, YouTube, you name it, we're there. Hashtag Janette's TV. And until next time, continue to be fabulous.